Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning back in. It's Hobby Think Tank. I always have to think about the name of this. I'm here with John. John, thanks for joining me.
Mike, thanks for leading the charge here on
Happy
Hobby
to.
Think Tank.
We're gonna talk about basically a financial checkup on hobby financials or a checkup on hobby financials. There are a number of topics that we talked about via text early in the week and then again today. We it got started talking about people investing in cards, and it kind of evolved from there. But let's talk first of all about the PSA line of credit for $125 million. What do you think? They only mention the expansion. Where are they expanding? China, Japan?
Japan, I believe, and
Yeah,
Jersey.
right. Jersey, I think, is just about ready to open. I know they're hiring graders. But one of the first lines in the announcement for the PSA $125 million line of credit is obviously we have plenty of money right now, but
Obviously.
what do you think's going on with PSA? Why would they take out PSA's parent company? Why would they take out a $125 million line of credit at this time in the economy?
You're asking me why they would do that. I don't know. What struck me was that it is kind of a bumpy time to borrow money. And when people say that they've got plenty of cash, yet they want to borrow cash at higher interest rates than we've seen in quite a long time, doesn't quite make sense to me. And I'm not saying they're in financial dire straits. I'm just curious as to now. Uh, why now is this happening? And $125 million is a big nut for anybody in our hobby or industry. I guess it would be, but it seems it's a pretty heavy load to be carrying or attempting to be carrying in this financial environment.
Yeah, and they have businesses that I can't even think of off the top. It's a big, big company.
I know
Not
Golden, right? That's the one. That's
right.
Card Ladder. I doubt the Card Ladder folks are getting a big chunk of that, but
Yeah, Genament.
yeah.
Uh,
Uh,
is
yeah.
that
So
is that
what is it? Well, I mean, so there's those companies which you would think they've been fully absorbed, and there's no more. It's not like they need to raise money to put those deals to bed. They're done. All that stuff. Everybody's in bed right now. Is there something on the horizon that they're looking at that they're trying to uh, gather their armaments and attack the fort? I don't know what they would be possibly looking at that would fit into their portfolio.
right? Well, what if it's something, and this is crazy, but what if they're looking at Panini right now as Panini's value plummets and they say, we could compete in the unlicensed space of cards,
Hmm.
and they buy Panini and do a one over on Fanatics. Crazy, but you never
Or
know.
Leaf, right? I know, you buy Leaf, you buy the guy that owns Leaf with it.
Brian Gray.
Yeah. So I mean, Panini is obviously their value has I don't want to say plummet, but they've been devalued through this Fanatics deal. So instead of buying something like that is theoretically sinking, would you want to try to look at it from a different angle and go after somebody like Leaf or Upper Deck? I'm sure is probably, I don't know what the financials Upper Deck v Panini are, but what one has a higher valuation, but they certainly seem healthier. Those two companies certainly would seem healthier than Panini, who is losing. They're leaking IP and they're leaking personnel, right? So I'm not
Yeah,
sure
and
if Panini's the bet there.
yeah, and I just saw. I haven't had a chance to look into it yet, but Paul Lesko, hobby attorney, posted on Twitter today something about Panini is suing ex-employees for going to
Awesome.
Fanatics.
Yeah, that'll go
So I
well.
I know no details, but in terms of, and we don't need to get into this now, it's going to be tough to sue employees for leaving for Fanatics. They need to have stolen intellectual property, stolen other employees with them, or stolen customers from Panini in order to
Right.
prove that.
And I doubt. I highly doubt that anybody's got a non-compete clause as an employee. Meaning, if I sign on with Panini in whatever year these folks started working, I doubt that there was a non-compete clause in there. There, you sign them when you leave as part of a severance, perhaps, but I severely doubt that they can be held to a non-compete when you're just trying to earn a living, I suppose, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned a couple of other things. Actually, you just said something that triggered a thought of mine.
Sorry for triggering you, man. I do that a lot.
I'm so triggered. Uh, so you said, why would they buy Panini on the way down? And I was thinking about investing in cards earlier. And you and I are not card investors. We're both card collectors. So we're largely going to agree on everything here, which might be boring for our viewers. But I was thinking earlier about there's this one YouTube influencer who paid $10,000 for like 12 Zion Williamson PSA 10s a while back. And of course, Zion's values are down quite a bit. But if you think about investing in cards, the best time to invest is when there's still a ton of potential, but the market has completely forgotten about the person. Like Jared Kelnick is a good example now for the Mariners. Nobody was buying his cards. His cards value were terrible after he batted like 170 the last couple of years. And that's really the time to buy is when he's still 22, 23 years old. And the hobby has forgotten about him. And it makes me wonder, what is out there? Could it be Leaf that the hobby has kind of forgotten about that has a ton of potential? I don't know.
When's the last time you heard Brian Leaf say something? And that's typically an easy question to answer. It would have been 5 minutes ago, but I haven't heard anything lately. And I don't know anything. I've been in the room with the guy once in my life and swore never to enter a room with him again. But, that seems like, what would you rather do? You'd rather buy the big 6,000 square foot house that's on fire down the street, or the 1,500 square foot house that is pristine and looks great? If you're looking for a house, right? If the lots are the same, you're going to take the house that's intact and has great curb appeal. You're not going to buy the house on fire. So who knows? Fanatics, like, I'm surprised that these employees headed to Fanatics, only because I figured Fanatics would eventually buy the company out. Maybe this is just another squeeze tactic by Fanatics to finally put the last nail in Panini's coffin, as far as the contracts go, not as a company, but buy the company and that's it. So who knows?
Yeah, certainly not us.
How would you react? How would you react to a collector's universe purchasing a maker of cards like Leaf or whomever?
Very good question.
Card Company A, whatever.
I think we've crossed over we've already crossed the line of collectors having conflicts of interest, right? Mm-hmm. I can't remember. There's one business that they own. Oh, so Golden. They're grading cards. They own Golden. Mm-hmm. There's conflict of interest there, don't you think?
I agree. Yep, I agree.
And so if you're collectors and you own Leaf, there's another conflict of interest, but the market doesn't care.
Right. Yeah. Well, I've said it a million times before. The secondary market is the biggest influencer or influence on our hobby. That means you, me, the dealers, other collectors, and breakers, all that stuff. Anyway, once the card gets out of the manufacturer's hands, that's where the real money is made. You can buy a $2,500 box of Natural Treasures all day long, but the real money's made once those cards leave the store and are out the door, right? And everybody from the beginning of time has tried to tap into that. Beckett Media, or I should say Beckett Publishing, did that, but they did it in an innocuous way, which supplemented the hobby, not tried to bleed it dry. That some of these companies, it feels like they're only in existence to not benefit or make what we do better as hobbyists, but to extract money from our pockets, or become a way station for our money between point A and point B. So, it's no different. That's the, PSA is in existence because people buy cards and want them graded. They didn't, they didn't create the cards. So maybe that's one of the pieces in the puzzle for them. They want to be on the creative end and really do something like that instead of just kind of piggybacking off of the hobby. They've been very successful. They've done very well, but the next step is to actually maybe make the cards themselves instead of influencing markets like Card Ladder, influencing the resells like gold and stuff like that. Maybe they have a chance to make an impact that no other company like that has done.
Can you imagine if they're selling PSA graded cards that PSA made straight from PSA?
Yeah, I mean, I think that disgusts most people. I mean, we feel that way if Fanatics got into bed with a grader and right off the line cherry pick the best cards. What does that mean to you and I? Well, not you, who supposedly doesn't open wax anymore, liar. But
I broke that, unfortunately. I'm back on the wagon.
But what does that mean to, if I used to do some things where I've been to the Marlboro factory plant down there and the Philip Morris plant down there in Richmond, where they pick off by hand, they pick off creased cigarettes, put them in boxes, and then the employees take them home, whatever. But big 4x4x4 pallets, boxes, pick off what happens the other thing where they pick out the perfect cards and the rest they're not going to sell you slabbed sevens right from off the line. They're going to try to sell you tens or sevens that have 10 labels on them. So it's such a dicey proposition for the manufacturer to be one and the same with the graders. Graders are having enough credibility issues right now, as last couple of years. Most people have realized grading is just a crapshoot. So, boy, I can really bring a room down, can't I?
So let's move from collectors company to collectible the company, because Ezra Levine, who was their CEO, just left there. Have we heard an announcement yet of where he's going? I think
No, it's an old. The hype is being built. I don't know, and I'm not saying that facetiously, but it's there's been some. Hey, stay tuned. We'll see what happens. Like I said, the secondary market. How do we do that? We're going to take the cards that exist and we're going to pretend to sell you part of a dream here, or if you're not into dreams and you're an investor, we're going to sell you an investment here. And that's one of the problems I had with Collectible was they would tell dreamers that now you own a Mickey Mantle 52, and they would tell investors, wow, look at this Mickey Mantle 52 that you can turn your $1,000 into $2,500. And they may have done that, but I think people have kind of wised up a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that you can agree with me that it was a pretty ridiculous idea to collectors in the first place. Like, we look at that idea and say, who would do that?
Right.
But
do you want to own something? It's like swampland in Florida, right? Like, why do you want to own something that you'll never, I can tell you, Mike, that I own 2% of a 52 Mickey Mantle, and you'll just have to believe me. Right. You can't come over and you can see a certificate if you want. But one of the biggest problem I had was, and I discussed this with one of their promoters on his show, and I, what happens in the unforeseen instance where collectible just disappears, gets wiped off the face of the earth? What happens to these cards and people's investments and stuff like that? First people in line are the bigger creditors. They're not the shareholders, right? So, and I'm told, oh, every card is different. Well, I went on the SEC filing. I looked at the SEC filings, and they were all listed by the same company, line item, different cards and different percentages, and stuff like that. It's kind of strange to me. Like, even like they didn't own the cards and chop them up as far as percentages. You could have half of a Hannes Wagner card and sell you can have a card and sell 49% to the public and keep the 51% for yourself. But what happens if the company goes under, right? Like the assets they're going to be seized. I know people that have had personal stuff in buildings where the company has gone under, and once the sheriffs come and lock those doors, you're not getting in. So you're not getting your 50. Just because you own 51% of that car doesn't mean you're getting any of it back. So that's the problem I had with it, because real estate is one thing. It's a tangible asset. We see it, all that stuff. It's a corner lot. It's always going to be a corner lot. But a card, who knows? Zion Williams, 12 of those, can drop in value overnight forever.
Yeah, well, it's always a corner lot until they build another lot next to it, like my neighbors had done to them a couple of years ago. It was a dead end. It was a dead end. And they had a corner lot, and then they decided, we're going to build a connector from that street over there. It was wooded area.
Right.
And so then they added houses. And so my friend no longer had a corner lot.
My lot is in the middle of a neighborhood because I didn't want to know what was going to happen on the outside of that neighborhood. Anything could happen, right? So, that was my concern. Is, again, I think you and I both get queasy with the idea of sports cards as long-term investments and holds and stuff like that, right? So the way they went about it in a grown-up fashion, it may seem on the up and up, but it just never has made sense to me. And their marketing, like I said, is a two-pronged attack, one on sentimentality and the other one on investability. And man, either way, I think the shareholders come out as losers, and God forbid something were to happen, everybody loses. Cards are gone, liquidated, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. So is there a future for fractional? Is there a future for investors the way we've seen them over the last few years, or is this the end of the road?
People have been investing for decades. Okay. And the best investors you'll find are the dealers, I think, right? They buy low, they sell higher. You don't have to, and I've said this to some of my friends, you don't have to, there's the old buy in the trough and sell at the peak. Nobody knows when the peak is. So buy low and sell for a profit, right? And dealers do that on a constant basis. And you want to become an investor in a hobby, become a dealer. You'll turn $400 into $1,400 and $1,400 into $14,000 time and time again. You can do that.
Or you could turn $400 into $450 in a couple of days, and that's a pretty big win.
What happened to all those poker players from 15 years ago that flooded the market and bought the books and were going to become professional poker players? Well, guess what? They're, who knows what they're doing now? Maybe they're buying Zions and Lucas and how does Mike Moynihan pronounce it? Djokovic's?
Yeah, he said Jokic. I don't remember how he pronounced it. You had to
phonetically spell it out. I love it. Yeah. But to me, that's where and a good dealer will buy a card or a lot of cards and either sell them immediately. If they buy something for $100, they have no problem selling it for $250. Or if they buy it for $100 and see a long tail potential, they'll sell it off slowly or sit on it, right? I mean, too many people want to go from table 101A, buy a card, and over to table 101B and sell that card. That's tough. Day traders, very few people succeed or few people succeed at day trading on the stock market. Many people have tried, and same thing with house flippers, right? Most of the house flippers are out of that game, and people who have done that for decades are still doing it and doing well. So it's, the short-term mentality and the short-term gain, hopefully that's weeding its way out of our supposed hobby quickly.
Yeah. You mentioned in our text conversation, cards as collateral. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess PWCC is involved heavily in that. And again, I'm not an early adopter, and I don't necessarily know, I know this might sound strange, but I don't necessarily know when a good idea is a good idea. But I certainly have spidey sense of bad ideas that are obvious to me immediately. It's the same thing with borrowing cards to buy more, or borrowing on your cards to buy more cards, right?
Yeah. So you have a
And
$100,000 card and you take out a loan of $50,000 against it, and then that card
or
plummets.
$100,000. Say
Sure.
you want to get full, you have full equity in that card, and you borrow against it in whole, and that card's worth 50,000 or 75,000.
Yeah.
You've lost, right?
Yeah. It seems to me, and I'm no expert, it just seems like a really bad idea.
Right. And again, these cards are flaming cards that are supposed to be played with, and I know we don't play with them anymore, but they weren't. It's not gold. It's not xenon that you mine out of the atmosphere. They're cards, right? They don't have a secondary value other than to supposedly to enjoy and play on our own nostalgia. So, you know, I don't see banks lending me money against my cards, or you know, the risk assessment managers in most financial institutions will say no to this nonsense. But our own internal apparatus or can't say no, right?
Right.
Our own industry can't say no. This is a great idea. We can get more money out of what we already have, and it's just silly. It was a bad idea to begin with, and
Right.
I think it's that bad idea has come to fruition.
Last year, Mark's Cards very famously took in a lot of cards that they were sending off to PSA, thousands of cards worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe, and essentially went out of business while they were holding all of them, or maybe PSA had some of them.
PSA had them all, I believe.
Okay, so but PSA legally had to send them back to Mark's Cards, and Mark's Cards was going through bankruptcy.
Right.
So now let's apply this to vaults for a minute. You send your card off to PSA. You say, I want this in the vault after you're done grading it. PSA then puts your cards in their vault. What happens? And obviously, PSA is not going to go out of business, but what if they do? What kind of risk is there for the collector when PSA is holding all of your assets, your collecting assets?
Who's going to get the money first? Probably
Exactly.
not the guy who owns the champagne Mike Trout rookie card. It's going to be the landlords and all the other
Bankruptcy judge is going to step in and say, you got to sell these assets that you're holding.
the provider of the $125 million line of credit, all that stuff. We're way down on the list, as Bob Marley would say. And vaults, I think, do serve a purpose. One of the best things about vaults that I learned from listening and observing and stuff like that is that if I'm in China or Canada or Djibouti and I wanted to buy a card on whatever platform, I can have it sent to a vault, not have to worry about getting it sent to Djibouti and paying customs on it. And if I wanted to keep it, I keep it. If not, I can sell it without the tax and tariff ramifications. So I think that's great. I think it's wonderful, especially with our Canadian neighbors and our neighbors to the south in Mexico and stuff like that. I think it's a wonderful thing in that respect. But
nobody wants cards in Djibouti.
I've put some cards in some stranger places in Djibouti, and you'd be surprised, Mike. Here's the thing, though: some of the best music ever made burned up in a fire at I think it was Warner Brothers or something like that, or MCA, somewhere in the Valley in California, and they take as good a care as with that stuff as I would imagine any card vault would take care of theirs, because there's some priceless stuff in there in music and film and stuff like that, master tapes and stuff like that. So fires can happen. We know Southern California gets a little crazy. I don't know what any place that isn't immune to something, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, stuff like that. So, you run the risk of having a catastrophe like that. I know that's an extreme condition, but, if you've ever seen Ocean's 11, people can get anywhere, anytime. You just need a Chinese acrobat and you can make off with millions and millions of dollars in cards. So I don't, I'm a collector. I have my own vault. I have two vaults actually, the bank and my own vault, and that's how I prefer to go. But I do understand that a lot of jewelry. Say you go to Antwerp, you learn about the diamond trade, and same thing. They keep all that stuff in vaults and stuff like that. But you know, it I think it can be a positive thing, but it's something that I don't necessarily subscribe to because I like to have my cards in hand. I'm sure you're the same way. You like to have them over your flowing golden locks that are on your hair. You like to have your cards right above you. So, vaults aren't terrible, but it's just not something I enjoy. And I certainly, it's not something that I would take part in.
Yeah, I am definitely with you. Well, we're at 26 minutes here. Obviously, we'd like to wrap up by 30. What other topics you had?
What else did we say? Do we have anything else? Let me see. I'm gonna look at my notes.
Those are the big ones. I think my last thought is these developments are good for the collector. If you're just into buying cards, you don't want to grade your cards, you just want to buy cards and collect them, these developments are good. Prices are coming down.
Mm-hmm.
Cards are still being created and developed and sold. You go to card shows. I think this stuff is good for the collector.
What do you think that you're going to the National Sports Card Convention this year?
Yeah.
All right. What do you think the big thing last year there was a lot going on, it seemed. It seems awfully quiet lately, and I'm not saying that that's the quiet before the storm. I'm just wondering if things have just quieted down and we've settled into a new normal. I know the National has added nearly 250,000 square feet of space, supposedly, and if they haven't added any tables, we know what that means. That means maybe more corporate presence. I'm just wondering what corporations are or what parts of the industry are going to come out and force at the hobby that require this much more space. And just wondering about that because it seems like the breaking tornado has settled down a little bit lately as far as all the massive breakers aren't as big as they used to be as far as the hype. So what do you think?
Yeah, well, it's 100 days away, so
it's creeping up, man, isn't it?
Plenty of time for them to make some announcements, but I could see them doing some more stuff with kids. You bring in, you have a big room where kids can.
Did you say rum?
Room?
There you go. There's 2 O's in there, buddy.
Right. Did I say rum?
You said rum.
Rum.
There.
Maybe it's my main accent. I don't
okay.
think so. Yeah, I think that I could see them having games, activities in a room where people can go in and interact with each other instead of just going to tables and looking at cards. What do you think?
Well, listen, truth be told, we're there to buy cards, right? And we're there to see our friends.
But we're old, John.
Well, what are you gonna do? You gonna play ping pong? You're gonna play one-on-one with something? I heard you don't know how to dribble, so I don't know what you think you're like. If you want to play games, I don't know. I mean, there was a little bit of that last year in Atlantic City. Kind of, there's a boardwalk atmosphere in Atlantic City, all that stuff, but. I don't. I'm a firm believer that our hobby has enough to offer where we don't need gadgets. We don't need cowbells from whatnot. We don't need, air horns and stuff like that. I think that our hobby brings enough spirit fingers that we don't need any bells and whistles like that. So, sure, kids would be great, right? I mean, kids need to do something, but kids like. Does Chuck E. Cheese get kids hooked on pizza? No, they're just, when they leave Chuck E. Cheese, they forget that there's pizza there or whatever. And that may be a bad analogy, but it's just like get them into the games and all that. Get them into the hobby. That's great, but I don't think we need pin the tail on a donkey to do so.
Right. I agree with you, but we're also not running companies that are promising to 10x the hobby. Yeah. So how are they going to do the 10x of the hobby? They have to get creative. They have to try to bring in kids and teenagers and people in their 20s
Um,
that have shorter attention spans and need things to be exciting. All the
So
time.
we make dollar baseball packs, baseball card packs. Okay, that's how you do it. Like, for I can't imagine being a 5-year-old kid and a baseball card pack cost $8 or whatever. Like, that's
Right.
how you do it. I've given many ideas openly about what I think they could that Fanatics can do better, and I doubt they'll implement any of them. But there's so much to do to get people hooked on cards that don't involve $900 boxes of baseball cards and stuff like that.
Right. Well, we're curious to know what you, the viewer, thinks. Let us know in comments. We appreciate it. Also, click that like button and subscribe if you're not already. And we'll be back again next week. John.
Hey,
Thank you.
watch Mike's show. Mike does a great show on an almost daily basis, but watch Mike's show over there at Junk Wax Hero. It's wonderful. Very
Thanks, John.
entertaining. Sure.
And you too just rejuvenated your channel
I
just
guess so.
a week or so ago. That 70s card show. Great stuff there too. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everybody.